Insidious: The Last Key is the fourth Insidious movie to come out, but it is a prequel to the original Insidious. It's a sequel to Insidious 3, but it's a prequel to the first film. This film is actually centered more on Elise, the psychic from the first film, who is also in the second film and the third film. It seems that as these films go on, they're getting more focused on Elise. And this is probably the most focused film that I've seen on Elise because it actually explains her origin, where she was actually a child in the 50s. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about this film, is that it actually showcases how exactly Elise came to find out that she had this ability to speak to the spirit world and the dead that reside in it. So I'm a fan of Insidious, and I really like the first film. I like where they're going in this franchise, but I was really scared for Insidious 4 because this was a film that was coming out in January. And January is not a good time for films. It's the beginning of the year, and this is the time where the studios are really trying to push out all those bad movies just to get them out of the way. And a large majority of the time, those bad movies are scary movies. The Devil Inside, The Forest, Bye Bye Man. I was really hoping that this fourth Insidious film was not going to be a January film. And it's definitely not a January film. I just think that it's the poorest out of the Insidious franchise. I thought this film was fine, but compared to the other Insidious films, it was kind of lacking, actually. There wasn't actually a whole lot of scares. The filmmaking is fine too, but it's not as good as the other films, where James Wan was heavily involved. James Wan was the producer of all of them. He directed the first two and produced the third one, but the director of the third one was Lee Wanell, who Wan has worked close with since Saw. So at least Wan had trust in Lee when the third one was coming out. However, this is a totally different director. James Wan did produce this one, but totally different director, and it definitely just feels like a scary movie. When you're watching the Insidious movies, it has a specific feel to it. It's not necessarily really scary. There are shots where it's really horrifying, but it's more of a creepy movie. There's not a lot of jump scares or anything like that. The first film was actually made under the concept of, let's not do jump scares, let's actually make a creepy, legitimate, scary movie. And this one really heavily relies on sound because I just didn't think that there was enough scares in this film. So that's one of the negatives I will say. Let's talk about the other parts, just the story in general. So like I said, I really enjoyed the origin of Elise and how we dabbered into that, but everything else is just kind of poor. With the other Insidious films, we got to explore not only Elise and what she's capable of, but there was a family involved in the first two films, and another one in the third one. But with this fourth film, it's really just about a guy that owns a house. So I'm not as invested as I was in the first three films. They do add these two young women into the mix, but that actually makes the film a little bit more cringier than I expected. If you didn't like Tucker and Specs from the original films, I personally like them. I thought they were the comedic relief, so that's just me. But if you didn't like them in the first three films, you're really not going to like them for this fourth one, because they're made more cringier than ever. They're flirting with these young women, and it's just really goofy, and it's just the cringiest portions of the film, and I was just in utter disbelief and almost shock. Just the way that they're flirting with these women. The first day that they meet, Tucker actually tries to go in for a kiss. Wow, nobody said anything about that. On set, nobody said anything about that. Nobody went up to the director and was like, hey, that's probably not... It's probably really cringy. And there's just not a whole lot of character conflict in this film as well. In the beginning, when Elise receives a phone call from the guy saying, hey, I need your help, she finds out that this actually was a house that she used to live in. And she says no on the phone. And then the next scene later, she's like, okay, I'm gonna help this guy. But you just said earlier that you weren't going to help him. So what happened in between where you were like, I changed my mind, let me help this guy? And then she tells Tucker and Specs that I need to do this alone. And the next scene later, no, we're going with you, even though it was already established that she was leaving. So it's just like, there's not a whole lot of conflict between the characters, and there's a lot of mind changing, like within scenes. And also what I really think hindered this film was this being a prequel to Insidious. We all know that these characters are going to be fine at the end of the film, because this is a prequel to Insidious 1, and they're in Insidious 1. There's a scene where Tucker is sticking his hand in between a fan to grab something, and as an audience, we're under the mentality that that fan is going to turn on and cut his arm off. But we all know that that's not going to happen because he has his arm in the first film. So it's problems like that where you know that these characters are going to be fine. There's not a whole lot at stake here. You're just kind of wondering how this film leads up to the first one, really. Overall, guys, if you are fans of Insidious, I think you won't have a problem with this film. You'll definitely think that it is the weakest, but if you're interested in the character Elise, I think you'll find it really intriguing as to what her childhood was like and all the abuse that she went through and how exactly she came to getting her powers. Compared to the other films, I definitely think it's the weakest, but if you're a fan of Insidious, you should probably go check it out because, you know, it's interesting if you're a fan of the franchise. So yes, guys, that was my review of Insidious: The Last Key. Comment down below what you thought of this movie if you've seen it yet. Like the video, share it, and please subscribe to Pixel Talk if you haven't yet for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and gaming content. Thank you guys so much. I am Corbin Stuckey, and this is Pixel Talk.
Pixel Talk f***ing sucks!
No, it doesn't, you asshole!